All systems go. Cleared for takeoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, a.k.a. ToeTagginTambo, back for the Week 2 review show edition. Got my guy Nades on here with me as always. We should be joined shortly. I think this week, at some point, we got Tyler coming over from Line Star, so he's going to talk. You guys know we always go through the perfect lineup first and then break it down once we get to actually looking at the slate. Before we get in with Nades and bring everybody in, I want to remind everyone quickly, this show is brought to you and presented by Line Star. Go to shipitnation.com/Line Star app. You'll be able to see all the tools and extras that they have. We are going to break down the perfect lineup here for you guys, but Nades, I'm going to bring you in. We got a lot of different overlays we're going to be messing with here, so I'll start with this one, but how was your Sunday, my friend? What are you thinking as Week 2 is wrapping up? I should note that after a little while, I'll talk about it when you come back, but how was your Sunday, Week 2? Let's talk about that so far.
Yeah, Sunday week 2 was very good. Had chances, and that's all you can ask for, right? Put yourself in position going to the afternoon slates. Just had some bad runouts, but that's happened. That's what we do. Overall, very profitable Sunday. Sunday Night Football showdown was good. I think Hamilton and myself broke it down pretty well on that Sunday Night Football showdown show, which again, do want to remind the people that is recorded each and every week. So after those afternoon late games lock, you can always check out that video that is pre-recorded. But yeah, overall, very good Sunday. Definitely interesting things to talk about. I'm sure we'll break it down always, but overall, it was very good weekend. Always love profitable Sundays.
Yeah, you'll take those, right? Everybody will. I think that's what the name of the game is. I did not have one. I thought I was going to make it up in showdown last night. Had some chances down the stretch. Needed Waddle to stay healthy and maybe pick up that 100-yard bonus or one of those touchdowns would have been nice. But before we go into the slate, do want to talk about this very quickly. We just announced it on our Twitter. If you don't follow us, you can go on to, it's, I guess, X, formerly known as Twitter now, but go over there. It's been enough time now. Maybe we can call it that. Go to @ShipItNation. You'll see. But we just announced a partnership. We're going to have a 3-show partnership with the Mayo Media Network. So you're now going to find our Monday Night Football show, our Thursday Night Football show, and our Sunday main slate show on the Mayo Media Network. So coinciding with Ship It Nation, it's a Ship It Nation Mayo Media collaboration, so it's going to be a good one. But starting today, 2 p.m. Eastern, Title, myself, Hoop, we'll all be over there. We'll be breaking it down as a 2-game slate, but then talking about the showdown slate for the featured one tonight, which is Cleveland and Pittsburgh. So keep that in mind as you guys check things out. Nades, let's check this out. We're going to go over. I'm going to bring in the screen now, actually, and then if Tyler pops in, we'll get him in the mix, and he can talk even more about this. But I do want to start it here. We will go to the screen share. You probably got the banner overlay quicker than I do.
Yeah, I'll grab it. I can
be there.
All right. Yeah.
And then I'm going to pop it up just so you guys can see. So we'll always start with this. This is what we talk about. You know, when Tyler comes on, he can mention it more. He works at Line Star, so he can talk to the company a bit more as well. But just in general, this is not what anybody hit yesterday. This is the perfect lineup. The winners yesterday were 224.2 when we get to the $20 Millie Maker. 201.24. We'll check out some other stuff when we move over there. But just to show you guys the perfect lineup here, we had Daniel Jones at quarterback. Late news, Kyren Williams, which we'll talk about in a second. I think there was a lot of people playing Joshua Kelly. There was an option to just late swap to Kyren Williams. We got that news very close to lock. If you wanted someone on another good team in a good game environment that you could set up and move off the chalk there, that was an option. Brian Robinson, Nico Collins, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, Mark Andrews, Puka Nacua, who just absolutely crushed again. And then the Buccaneers D got there super late with just I think it was a pick 6 and then another INT or something like that down the stretch. Was nice to see. So our guy Hamwich was not a fan of the Kyren Williams play, it sounds like. But I guess, like I say, if you wanted to go to somewhere that you could get off that ownership, you could go there. But that offense with Stafford, Nacua, and yesterday Kyren Williams turned out to be okay. So thoughts on the perfect lineup, Nades? Let's talk this one through. I mean, nothing really goes that crazy here. It's just kind of all the best guys that scored the most. But talk to us about this one a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so to be honest, I would never get to a lineup like this, but I did have a lot of these players in different formats, right? I build lineups very similar to you, very correlated, a lot of secondary stacks, main stacks in there. the Buccaneers defense, I like that play. I had that on one of my main teams. I know you talked about that a lot, right? The Bears just don't look the same, right? Fields is out there making mistakes. So the Buccaneers defense, 3,200, nice value play there. It was nice to see them get that pick six and then interception down the stretch, a couple sacks there. So that was nice. Nakua is definitely interesting. I mean, this guy should be 6,500, 7K. I mean, he's leading the league in targets. He's leading the league in production. Like, he is the wide receiver one in all of football right now. They're treating this guy like a poor man's Cooper Kupp. I mean, he looks like a complete stud out there. He's Matthew Stafford's safety blanket. Like, we'll talk on that too when we talk on Higbee. I mean, Nakua has taken a lot away from Higbee, which last year when we saw that, it was a lot of Higbee, right? Those underneath, through the middle kind of plays. Well, that's now Nakua. Nakua is getting all that. I mean, this guy is just absolutely smashing, and his price point continues to be super cheap. And I wish I would have definitely obviously had more of him because our tools and our content, which we'll touch on later in the show, definitely loved him again. And he wasn't super chalky by any means. And he definitely obviously needed him. He was on a lot of the winners. The Kyren Williams play, I don't think it's the craziest play in the world. I know how much doesn't agree there, but if you look at his price point, he's 5K. If you remember, Mr. Joshua Kelly, very similar price point. I think Kelly was 5K, 5,100, right there in that same range. And hey, you can always look at a running back that's going to get the work. I mean, he got 65% of the snaps in week one. So his production's there. He's involved in the passing receiving game as those dump offs. So I don't think that was the craziest play. That's always a piece there where he was on a lot of the winners, right? So that's a little game theory approach. You talk about that all the time, Tambo, like just flipping the build or going a little bit different, right? You don't have to go completely off the wall. I never was looking at Daniel Jones, anything like that. But I mean, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, those guys were definitely being played in many different lineups. So overall, I mean, there's a lot of pieces here that we got to, and I got to different pieces, but putting it all together like this, it definitely was not in the deck of cards this weekend.
Yeah, like the Rams, the Bucks, the Chargers, guys that are showing up and are from areas that we were looking at. I know that for a fact, and we'll go pull up our stack rankings here in a second. But just to note it, like Daniel Jones, the bounce back was huge, obviously for him after that first game where they lost 40-0. So you saw that. The Kyren Williams thing, I know I'm against my guy Ham on this one too, actually, and not just because results oriented. I think there was a possibility just for the checkdowns, things like that, because if that defense is coming at you, we know how he can use. But my bigger thing is, again, away from the results, he could have failed, is that if you're getting him at that much lower ownership than some of the other guys there, but that whole range, it wasn't like we were super set on any of them. Like, you know what I mean? We knew who was being played, Rashad White. We knew that guys like Kelly were getting played, that Dylan was getting played, but none of those guys we were super excited about beyond we knew that was where the value was on this slate. And we wanted some of that to be able to get up to guys like Keenan Allen and things like that. So I also like that, you know, you can get to a guy like Kyren. I wasn't really loving Kelly and Keenan together unless you were doing like a full stack, like Herbert, Kelly, Keenan, then I'm fine with it, which we'll talk about that when we get to, I believe is the winning $20 lineup that I kind of really like. We'll talk about that one in a second that took down the Millia. I think it was a single bullet also. But just to note, the difference there is like if you're not using Kelly, you can use a guy like Keenan Allen. That ended up working out well yesterday. If you're not using Godwin at 6K, you can use Evans at 6,200 or whatever. You can get pieces of the games that way. But like you said, this is just not something I'm building. There's lots of ways to move this thing and maneuver it around to what people actually played. You'll see that in a minute when we get there. But I do want to show this. We showed it off last week. We'll show you guys our site each week on this show to try and give you more of an angle than what some people just consider, you know, picks, plays, or core reports, all that. But this is the stack rankings tool on our site. It's been on fire. This is 2 weeks in a row now. And just to check it out, so when you get on there, it's sorted automatically. You can sort it by value. This is what I'm looking at now. This is from yesterday's update. So this was our final setup there. Is our guy Tyler from Line Star. What's up, Tyler?
Hey, man. Sorry about that.
No problem.
A little late dropping off the daughter.
And then we'll hop back to you. Yeah, no problem at all. Cool. Always family first. We know this, but we're just showing off our stack rankings tool when we'll go back to the perfect lineup in a second, get your thoughts. But just so you guys see, like I said, we have a last update. It is linked and auto synced directly with our projections. And then of course our ownership, which is provided by Line Star. So we appreciate that. But just to note it, we wanted to set it up differently because a lot of people around the industry have tools like this. But what you end up seeing in all these tools is Josh Allen, Diggs. It usually only shows one guy. So it's like Josh Allen, Diggs, Hurts, AJ Brown, whatever the top stacks are for the site. Lamar, Mark Andrews. Well, no shit. We know those are going to be the ones that pop the most and project the most. That's the most obvious thing. What we're trying to do is to take our projections, which are different than those around the industry, bring the values into play to create a value score, and then also talk about total ownership so you can find some of these stacks. And I know, Nades, when we look at one of your lineups for yesterday, we'll see some of this stuff in there. But just going back to the perfect lineup for a second, you see some of these shades, right? Not all the same guys. I'm not saying one for one in a perfect lineup. I'm saying, like, you see the Rams, you see the Bucks, you see the Chargers, and then you pop back over and you see the Bucks, the Rams. The Chargers weren't as high on this list, but I know that we like them quite a bit. And if you weren't playing Josh Kelly, like I said, it kind of made sense to just plug that in and use a guy like Keenan Allen. But just to note, like Purdy, these guys missed touchdowns and still had a pretty big day. Debo got one there later on a rush, but was a pass originally, got moved over to a rush. But this stack did well. Tannehill, Burks did fine. Allen obviously came through with some of his guys. Baker, again, Mike Evans doesn't pop in this one, so it's not ideal. But just to show, like, being on these stacks and seeing where they came from. This stack is a whole nother day to talk about, but Nakua, Reed, Reynolds, a lot of these guys, you could mix and match these value pieces, which even if you weren't using the stack rankings, you'd be able to find them in our projections and then be able to move it from there. Nades, did you have anything to add on this one before we go back to Tyler on the perfect lineup?
Yeah, the thing I like about this the stack rankings tool here is that second piece, right? You got guys like Cade Otton, right? Obviously not results oriented. Cade Otton didn't get there, but you got Jaden Reed, right? Everyone knows Jordan Musgrove was getting played at tight end because he continues to be cheap. Jaden Reed was kind of that forgotten guy in that value tier. He was just $3,400. Nakua there. Hunter Renfrow obviously didn't get there, but you got guys that second level of tier, right? That creates a value score and total ownership. Like, that's why when we review one of mine, number 2 stack, Tannehill, Chig, and Burks, you can say arguably they could have had more there, right? Westbrook Akini still vultured a touchdown at the goal line. Tannehill obviously rushed one in, right? They down the stretch, they kicked field goals. They didn't get there, but that total ownership at 17.8% provided by our partners over here at Line Star was a pivotal piece. I looked at that and I said, wow, they rank very good. Guys are already wanting to play Chig at tight end as a value guy. Why not just throw Tannehill on the other side of that game and add in his not DeAndre Hopkins, who got all the targets in week 1. Let's go back to the deep play, the big play guy, Treylon Burks. And it's overall a cheaper stack on the other side of that game that everyone wants to play the other side and just take my chances. And that's what I did. So that's the best part about this. And it's 2 for 2, Tambo. If you take pieces, looking at last week, looking at this week, I mean, you can definitely build some very, very high quality lineups using this tool, which is awesome. And
I like that you highlighted this one because this was another example. So we knew Musgrave was getting a little love at tight end, even in cash games, things like that. People were playing it. We knew A.J. Dillon was getting love with no Aaron Jones. This is a way to find it out. Okay, this is the guy in the middle that might make some sense. You knew with San Francisco side being up here, there was a possibility that the Rams could be involved as well. You actually had this game pop off a little bit, and that ended up being one where you could, whether it was Brock, I looked at a lineup after, it was Purdy, McCaffrey, and Nakua. If you put those 3 together, you could get like the standard stuff that we were looking at on the site. Rashad White with Bucks D. You could get Keenan Allen instead of Joshua Kelly. You could pay up and get a piece of that KC Jacksonville game with Travis Kelce, and that would leave you guys like Jaden Reed and guys like and another guy like
Josh Reynolds.
Reynolds was right here, where again people were on Montgomery. So if you're not on Dillon and Montgomery, here's a way you can get onto these guys as well and find your way around. So Tyler, it's been enough. I'll bring you in, man. Again, sorry, we had to keep it going. We like to be on time when we say we're going to go with our show's not calling you out, saying just we wanted to start. I knew you'd show up eventually. We saved it a little bit for you. We talked a little about the perfect lineup, but I want you to talk a little bit too, just about Line Star in general. We obviously started this partnership with you guys. We're super excited. Just showed off how we're using and integrating some of your stuff on the site to bring it over. Unknown is in the chat talking about it. The Bunny Man is in the building. The best Line Star has to offer. So, first name is great too, by the way. Love that. But just talk to us a little bit about Line Star itself, the perfect lineup, anything you want to add in there, man, as we go through.
Yeah, I mean, Line Star is one. We have an app that you can see all of this on the app as well as the website. You literally have access to all of it on your fingertips. The app works super easily, super seamlessly. And then, we have this perfect lineup, which is great to just review like we're doing today of everything going on here. And one of the things that I want to point out that happens all the time is I noticed on your projections, you had Stafford there in a Ram stack. But what happens sometimes that quarterback doesn't get in. And all of the time, there is a secondary stack that we see come in on the perfect lineup. Yesterday, Daniel Jones was the QB. He didn't have a stack with him in the perfect lineup, but there still is a second one. And that happens a lot where it's a QB, a wide receiver, and then say another wide receiver and running back from a different team. So a lot of the time we see a 2-2 stack, and that's just some of the information you'll gather from, always going over these perfect lineups.
Yeah. And I see this one a lot too. Like you see the running back, obviously a late value play. We talked on this a little bit earlier, but you see him with a target monster and you almost just can say, look, for less than 10K, I'm getting two guys that may just get all the targets. And in this case, they got a bunch of them, obviously Nakua breaking records and setting records and things like that. So, little things that you can pick up from it. Again, maybe this isn't the way you would have got to your lineups. For me, probably not. You're probably not leaving 1,300 on the table.
Totally.
I get all that, but it's a good place to look from to go off of and then get some ideas. And then you guys have everything, right? Like you talk about it up here, just you can see it, but MLB, CFL, shout out to my Canadians, myself included. You got, in this case, CSGO, you got NFL, PGA, League of Legends, UFC, NASCAR, CFB, you got WNBA for when it's around. So just anything else on the site that you wanted to highlight or talk about while we have it up here. Obviously, everything listed at the top. So go ahead.
And what's showing up is just the active sports right now. Obviously we have NBA and some of the other stuff going on, but this is just what's going on currently that's there. Right. But yeah, we cover all the major sports. CFL one that is, kind of forgotten about by most of the major DFS carriers, and we have that, and ownership for pretty much all of them. And it's just kind of an all-in-one stop. We have your projection, all the tools you need and whatnot. You can use the SHIPIT projections on our platform if you wanted to just import those too. So there's a lot of different ways. We have the optimizers to help you as well. And it's just all in one at a cheap price. And we're trying to, give all the value to the customer like you guys are.
Yeah, all encompassing. Like you said, I think, people don't notice this, but there's all these are links. Like we're just on the perfect lineup. There's literally everything that you can go and check out, all kinds of different stats, tidbits, things like that throughout. If you guys do want to check it out, we've got it set up really easily for you. You can just go to shipitnation.com/LineStar app. And that will get you guys set up. There's a promo over there running. You guys can check all of that out. But let's hop into some of these other lineups. Let's move over here. Let's start on the $20 winning lineup. And I do want to start with this one because I think it was interesting. I'm just going to get it set up here where I think it's probably fine like that. If you guys can't see it, let us know in the chat. I think it's good enough, though, to be able to see. But you can see here, Sports King 101 is the winner. Got the job done here. Had a bunch going on. Team stack, game stack, quarterback, pass catcher. There was no bring back, which we'll talk about in a second. Running back, DST stack. One running back per game, pretty standard rule. Had some low ownership guys mixed in there, including Daniel Jones at quarterback, and then no players versus the DST. These are all pretty standard things and trends that we're seeing quite a bit in these winning lineups. So, Nades, I'm going to start with you. I heard some different comments on this one. I want to hear your take on this lineup, what you think about it, and what your thoughts are on the overall build.
Yeah, first, so you're looking at that perfect lineup right there, that Danny Dimes, Saquon, Darren Waller stack. A stack like that does make sense, right? You're not going to mess with their wide receiver roulette from the Giants, right? The Hodgins, the Slaytons, the everyone, right? You don't know. You're going to say, okay, Darren Waller's the guy. All the talk in preseason, he was the guy for him. And you're going to grab Barkley. So you're going to grab the entire offense is how you're anticipating that. So I do like that. The no run back is kind of interesting, right? Personally, I don't think I would grab the whole offense there and not run it back. But especially with a team like the Giants and that Arizona game, I liked the Arizona defense a little bit. I know we talked on that. So obviously that. But, we talk about it, right? Just kind of I know in the Chargers game, we were talking on Keenan, Herbert, Keenan Allen, and Joshua Kelly, same kind of stack, same kind of concept, right? You grab the whole offense, you say it's not Mike Williams, it's not that. You're just going to full stack up the entire offense for the Chargers, run it back. So I do get that. Since he's not going to Kelly, he did pay out for Keenan Allen. I love that play. You talk about that all the time, Tambo. Flipping the build, flipping the script, right? Everyone wants to plug in the value running back, backup running back. We see this all season long where Kelly, he got a lot of work last week, even with Eckler in there. Who's to say week 2? He's just going to continue to get that same work and just get the entire lion's share and be successful, right? So paying up for Keenan Allen, the target monster there. The Christian Kirk play there, grabbing a piece from that Kansas City Jacksonville game, which people did like. Obviously, you grab Christian Kirk, you say Christian Kirk is still there. You got Ridley, you got that, but Kirk was the man last year, and hey, who's to say Kirk can't be there? He's cheaper than Ridley, a little bit lower ownership there. So I like that play. The Nico Collins, I see the Nico Collins. I saw that come up twice. Obviously, I personally wasn't getting to any Texans there, but that's probably just the last piece that fit. The Zach Moss thing I did want to bring up because I looked at the snap counts here, and Zach Moss got 98% of the snaps, I think, this week. And I didn't see many people around the industry at all. And the thing about that is he's $300 than those $400 than those cheaper running backs that everyone wanted to play, those 5Ks, the Dillons, the Kellys, the Rashad Whites, those guys there. And Zach Moss, they obviously acquired him and want him against a team like Houston, right, that can't stop the run. They were bad. We played running backs against Houston all season long last year. You have the little secondary stack there with Nico Collins. So I do like the lineup. Obviously, we were on Tampa Bay. The correlation there was Rashad White, Tampa Bay was all over. So overall, it's a fully correlated lineup outside of the onslaught Giant stack. But hey, it's still Joshua Dobbs led offense in Arizona there. So I think it's a similar lineup to how I would build. Typically, I would run it back, but overall, I think obviously, he's $1 million richer. So
yeah, we don't do, and I'll bring Tyler in to get his thoughts because we don't do. It's not results oriented. We know the guy won the milli. We're trying to look at again like how would we have got there? What are the thoughts? What are some of the things we think they did? So Tyler, did you have an opinion on this lineup? This is the $20 milli maker lineup that got the job done. Sports King 101. They had 5 lineups in this tournament. This was the winner. So you can see it up there. Any thoughts from you on this one?
One of the main things that I see is both with Nico Collins and Zach Moss popping up. Look, that game total was only 39.5, but it was going to be one of the fastest paced games. Mm-hmm. So there was a real path for it to going over, which it did and absolutely crushed with these two guys. So I think it was a sharp move to have a small game stack in there of that. And then as far as the QB RB situation, I actually love that just because everybody does the stack of a wide receiver and tight end with the quarterback. The running back doesn't get thrown in there as much. Now, the one thing that I thought was interesting is Daniel Jones is a running quarterback, and so going with the double stack of him, it's just kind of rare that that's going to hit, but it absolutely did in this situation.
Yeah, and I agree. I actually have a lot of thoughts here. I think one is out of the gate. Just an interesting tidbit was, again, we talked all the time about week 2 being the overreaction week. Funny enough, last year during week 2, Saquon Barkley was like 40% owned. You can go back and see that actually. Let me see here if I can do this while we're talking. I think I can go back to week 2, 348 days ago, the perfect lineup. And then if I go to percentage owned running back, yeah, this is pretty cool, actually. If you guys want to see this quick, this is back on Line Star. We got Tyler here. He'll be, hey, these guys know my stuff. Where he might be impressed.
Just change it so it shows the actual values. Put on one of the main contests there on the right-hand side. Oh, no. The right blue in the blue box in the middle to the right. Actual ownership values. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, 43% Saquon Barkley, and this was in, just so you guys could see, week 2 last year. Another thing cool about Line Star, like you can just get all the old data and go back and pull it and see. But just was funny, I thought, was from last year, the overreaction was to play Saquon Barkley, and we are being extremely results-oriented in this case now, going back to this, just to say Saquon was in it. But look at the difference a year makes. And back to the overreaction factor was what happened in week 1. Giants got absolutely stomped. They must suck, right? Can't play them. So 3%, 8%, 5%. Again, slate dynamics, I get it all. I'm just saying the other angle was Arizona D wasn't the most popular. We didn't have a Washington Commanders this week, but they were popular for sure. So going against that, You don't really need a run back because it's a Joshua Dobbs-led offense. So I actually don't mind not having a run back. To Nade's point, and again, to Tyler's as well, they're kind of separate points, but I do agree with both of them. One is just find your best options. Why mess around with the wide receivers when you have no idea who it's going to be? Let's go to Waller and Barkley and hope it's those guys. To Tyler's point, it is tough to usually see these two guys go off together in Jones and Barkley, but if you're going to go in, I got no problem going all the way. And we've seen plenty of times you check it down to Barkley and he drags a guy like Daniel Jones around, and then maybe it's next time he sneaks in, but you kind of have all of the red zone, end zone coverage when you have Jones, Barkley, and Waller. It feels a pretty good bet that you're going to have a lot of touchdown upside between those guys on top of the catches through the stretch. I liked what you brought up, Tyler, about the pace. This secondary stack made a lot of sense. You probably didn't want Stroud, who was questionable right up till game time anyway. And if you were playing Richardson, who I liked yesterday, unfortunate that he got banged up and got the concussion after I think it went out with 9 minutes left in the second quarter. Like, he was going to go off, but that didn't mean Zach Moss couldn't get there still. Like, there was still going to be opportunities for him throughout the game. He got a bunch of snaps and was probably going to get that either way. I liked the pace in that game. And I talked a lot about this yesterday on the free show on the SHIPIT Nation YouTube channel here, where we went through with Hoop, myself, and Title, because everyone's like, oh, 39-point total. Don't play that. You don't have to play the game. We're not game stacking it. We're just looking for pieces in the game. The game could end up being 21-7, and it ends up being Collins that has the 7 points and the touchdown with 8 catches and 110 yards, still only 7 points. And and Zach Moss has 2 touchdowns, and it's still 21-7. It's still only scored 28 points. Let's just hypothetical it here to say that. So I think that's fine. Didn't overreact to the price bump on Calvin Ridley and move up and pay that. Instead played Christian Kirk, who had a horrible week 1, and said, I'm fine with it. Get a piece of that big total gain. And then wasn't playing Kelly and playing him at that high ownership. And then I loved White and Tampa Bay defense. And really, they were almost the 2 highest owned within this lineup. So yeah, good job to Sports King 101. Either of you guys have any other thoughts on this one before we go to the other one?
No, I think it was it's a similar style lineup on how I would build with the correlation in there in the game script theory, right? No Kelly, pay up for Allen, pay up for the target. So overall, I think it's a good build. And obviously he got the job done. And looking at his overall exposures, he was kind of high overall on Keenan Allen and that Giants game. So he obviously picked his spot, right? With 5 lineups in a contest that size, right? 236,000 people. You got to pick your spot. And we talk about that all the time. And he had 60%. So 3 out of his 5 lineups there were that Waller, Barkley, and Daniel Jones.
Allows them to get people around. I will never give someone credit for exposures when they run 5 lineups. It's not a shaming 5 lineups. What I love that they did is you commit to something when you only have 5 and you go a different route. You're trying to win $1 million in that. When someone tells me I had 60% of Daniel Jones yesterday, and I'm like, oh, how many lineups did you play? And they played 3 or 5. I'm not shaming them, but I'm saying I don't credit it as really having exposure. Factually, it's 60% Daniel Jones exposure on 3 out of 5. But like, you were committed on the money you put in. It's just not, when we're talking about exposures, to me, it's like on your 150 set or on your MME pool, what you were getting. So there was actually something going there. What I do love that they did is commit to a spot, to your point, Nades, where if you're going in. Go Dolphs 10, really sharp player, friend of mine, met him at a few different live finals. I think just looking at his lineup, he also had a Daniel Jones one up there. This is probably more what you were thinking, Nades. Like, even though he did the Jones-Barkley thing, he ran it back with an Ertz. Tutu instead of Nakua, didn't have the money, so I could see that. Paid up at 2 running back spots instead. One thing I noticed, though, with all these lineups, and we saw it yesterday, was the fact of not going with all the chalk. Week 1, the pricing was out since the end of July, so a lot more chalk was getting there, even though this year week 1 wasn't as strong of a chalk hitting week as what we saw this week. But just in general, I think you saw a lot of these lower owned lineups get there. This one had 2 value plays in it, pay downs, but really went up at running back. Tyler, anything with this one that you see? This is a buddy of mine, Go Dolphs. He's a sharp player. This is a 12th place finish, so not what he wanted, but still was right up there in the mix. Anything you see on this one before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, the only real thing here is you got to point out the only stack is the QB RB situation, which, doesn't always get there, but when it does, nobody else will have it. So it's going to push you up to the top quick.
Yeah. Yeah, this is more like you said, if they just run on him. He still had, a secondary stack in here with McCaffrey and Atwell, which I see, had a couple, had Zach Ertz as the run back. So he did a little bit differently, but I don't mind that. I thought, I think that's a pretty strong lineup as well. Let's move on and go over to this other one. This is going to be now back-to-back weeks we see this. So in the bigger contest. So last week was the 44-44 Mega Millie Maker. Our guy Irby won it with one lineup. This week, Russell Miller. I've seen him around plenty, another sharp player. He only had one in this, maybe he had a ticket or something like that. But either way, did not go overweight and jump into this. But he went with the one lineup and it got the job done. So his winning lineup was back to our stack rankings, little Brock Purdy, Deebo Samuel, right? You get that one out of the way earlier. Puka Nacua is in there. Keenan Allen, Zach Moss, Kyron Williams, Darren Waller, and then the Pollard Dallas. This one's got to sting a little bit, Nades. Still got the job done for a full milli for someone else. I know you needed that for a lot more money, but Pollard and the Dallas defense rounded it out. So, Tyler, I'll start with you on this one. We definitely see a little bit of a flipped script here from the build perspective. Like, you didn't see a lot of people pay up for Dallas. I mean, 10% of the field did, but in general, pairing the two and doing all this together made sense. It was more of a FanDuel move yesterday. I think Dallas was like 30% over there. Pollard was higher owned over there as well. Similar prices with a lot more salary to play with. But give me your thoughts on this one. It looks to be a pretty well-built lineup in general.
Yeah, I mean, a full stack pretty much of that 49ers Rams spot was pretty interesting. Also, the fact that he just adjusted to the late news with Kyron Williams there, and when he was already going 49ers heavy, is just kind of a sharp move there. And obviously Dallas D is just a beast and got there, and if you're going to take that D, you might as well take the running back.
Yeah, I like that combination always. And they bring it up here in the trends again, and if you guys see, the only trend that he didn't hit is the low-owned player, which is kind of BS because 5, 6, 6. I think it's anyone under 5, so it has to be 4.9 or less. I mean, he had plenty of low ownership, didn't even hit 100 for total, and the product was fine too when you look at 9, 5, 6, 11, 6, 9, 10. Like, it was all mid to low-owned guys. So I definitely think that's one thing to look at. But the other one is it was kind of the overstack. Somebody talked earlier, Rin Shepard said committed to hoops last year's Millie, Detroit and Seattle. Fun to see, win money, all that. It's awesome that happened. It was a good game again. It went to OT at 31-31. Like, it was a solid, or I think it was 34-34. I can't remember the final now, but either way, the point being is, like, the thing people were making fun of with Hoops lineup last year was how he ran a 3-4. Usually people think that you got to stack the quarterback side up the heaviest. So it's like a 4-3, but he had 3 guys, including the quarterback from Seattle, I believe it was. And then the 4 Detroit guys. But just to note it, like, you can see here where Purdy and Deebo was the only San Francisco side, but then 2 on the other side. Some people would say I'd want to see Stafford there instead of Purdy, and maybe that would have been fine. But in general, I got no problem with it. I think it just still set up nicely. You see Keenan Allen instead of Josh Kelly. I really like this combination. Kyron Williams and Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's expensive. He has to usually do a lot more at that price point versus Nacua and Kyron. I talked about this earlier, but that's a $9,900 combo pack, right? I'm okay with that because that kind of made sense. I know a lot of people did it yesterday. Again, not being results oriented, this did not work out, but a lot of people did Dillon with Musgrave. But that one didn't work out. But if you did Dillon with Reed, it again wouldn't have worked out for Dillon, but it still would have been a lot better overall. That would have been a way to say I get Dillon and Reed for cheap, hope that it's them or both, and it ends up being one that still makes up a little bit for the other side. So I actually have no problem when people are doing that. But Nades, I'll let you take over on this one. Had a few different combinations here that were nice, though. Anything else you see with this one or anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to bring up is the Darren Waller piece on how we've seen Darren Waller a couple times, obviously on both these $1 million winners. And if you look at projected ownerships from LineStar, obviously courtesy of their right, Luke Musgrove, those guys, Troutman, Higbee were kind of the top guys. So if people were paying up in that 4,600, 5K range up there, they were going to Tyler Higbee in that Rams game. So what he did is he grabbed Kyron Williams and Nacua, right? Kyron Williams, we all know the Cam Akers thing, right? Cam Akers is Cam Akers, right? They just hate Cam Akers over there. Kyron Williams, 65% of the snaps in week 1. Nacua led the entire league in targets in week 1. He's definitely the guy. He's the poor man's Cooper Kupp. So they said, I'm not going to play Tyler Higbee in that tight end who's getting the ownership. I'm going to spend in a similar range there in Darren Waller, who, hey, all the talk, like I said in preseason, Daniel Jones loves Darren Waller, newly acquired piece. I'm going to do that, flip the script. I'm still going to grab pieces from that Rams game because I like that Brock Purdy. I like that game there. So overall, I think it was a very well correlated built lineup. And again, that Zach Moss, the Zach Moss play probably just fit, right? He was off. He didn't want to go to the chalk and Joshua Kelly there. So he got the Keenan Allen. And then the Tony Pollard is definitely a soft spot in the heart there. Just that was an absolutely brutal game. I know it costed me a lot of money. It costed our boy Rio over here a lot of money, including probably a potential live final seat there. Just watching that, McCarthy's a complete donkey there. But I like the correlation right there with you're already playing Tony Pollard and everyone likes spending down at defense. And I mean, Dallas is playing Zach Wilson, right? Dallas defense, we know how they are with Micah Parsons, Diggs, all those guys. They just continue to just smash quarterbacks, jump routes, continue to get the job done. So why not pair him with the defense? Say, hey, it's going to be the Tony Pollard show, which it didn't end up being. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb, some other guys got there. The tight end roulette happened. And overall, you just flip the build. So overall, it's a very well built lineup because I really like that tight end piece though, where if everyone was spending up, they were going to Tyler Higbee. So you're grabbing the Kyron Williams piece and Nakua, saying the whole offense is going to run through them. You're going to play Darren Waller, who might just get there, right? Because he's the guy. So that's one thing that stood out a lot to me.
Yeah, and opposite side of Ertz, opposite side of Arizona D, which people played some of. Also, just reacting to late news. Like obviously little things, but Nakua. So Kyron Williams, the obvious one. Akers was a late inactive, deactivated before the game time. It was like 5 to 6 minutes. It was literally less than 10 minutes before lock, if I recall correctly. I remember being in the Discord notifying everyone quickly over at SHIPITNation.com that was what was happening. So it was like everyone last minute was making this decision. Should I just go to Kyron Williams over my Joshua Kelly lineups? And I get that. But just to note, that piece was late news. Also, Nakua, as much as we knew he was going to be active or expected it, there was a late beat writer put out that he's going to be involved heavily again. And that is what they did. So if you want to trust a little coach speak, we'll see how that goes moving forward. But definitely something that came out last minute and late there. The rest of the correlations kind of just made sense, not playing Kelly, Brock Purdy, and that. I mean, I still love this, just going back to our stack rankings, that, this is the type of things I look for. 49ers and Rams stood out. That's why I was in on that game. If you went to my slate plan, it had Brock Purdy in it. Talked about a lot of these guys throughout it. The Debo Ayuk stuff I was in on. Didn't get enough of this, but CMC with Nakua in some lineups, or Atwell is another guy that I was on. I went to Higbee again. That one did not work out. But seeing Jaden Reed, well, everyone's on Musgrave and Dillon. Seeing Reynolds when most people are on Amon-Ra and Montgomery. Like, you can find more from it. And I think that that's what people don't do enough, just in general, talking out loud here, is like the fact of projections and rankings and tools and all that. They're important. People, some of the top players in the world have been on podcasts in the last 3 to 6 months. I think about Utica, did the pod with Adam Levitan. Someone asked if you don't have time to get NBA stuff in and you only have like a half hour before the slate starts, what should you do? And you don't have projections. He said, just unregister the slate. Like, you're dead to everybody else that has that stuff. So you need these tools. That's why we provide them at ShipItNation.com. It was Petty Theft was on another show. It was on one of his Twitch streams talking about the same thing, talking about how important projections are. Obviously, he has his own in NBA and just rolls with them, but that's kind of the point. But it's also not just the same for everybody. When you're looking at these types of things and projections in general, it's not just the gospel to say, okay, give me these 5 stacks. Let's roll them out, print money. It's the same as when optimizers first became popular. And people thought, I guess should say this another way. When optimizers first came out, you could almost just click the button, press optimize, and go out and win money. But as things evolved, I'm saying people now think, if I get an optimizer, I'm going to win. That's the key, or that's the secret. No different than right now, the buzzword that's going around with Sims. Are Sims valuable? Absolutely. People know how to use them, and people that have been using them behind the scenes are making a lot of money with Sims. But I'm saying it's not just you go buy the Sims for whatever X price per month. It's pretty expensive at most places. You go buy these Sims and then you're going to print money. That's just not how it works. You're going to see something new and unique, but you probably don't know how to use them. So that's the challenge and the difference. It's the same thing. You want to be paying attention to what you're doing. You want to be able to see it. Sometimes the highest projected guy, it's good to know that that's where the ownership's going to go. If that's the case, if this, then that, what's something I can go and do to be a little bit different? And then reacting to late news, things like that, but definitely high correlation within this one. I want to change gears and look, Need Lunch Money, just super sharp guy. Got to meet him last year at the live final. He had maxed the seats at the Fantasy Football World Championship. Eric is his name. Awesome dude. A great guy. He was at King of the Beach. I met him there and then saw him at the Fantasy Football World Championship where you were allowed to bring as many people as seats you got. I thought it was so cool. He brought like his whole family, friends, grandparents, everything were down there with him. It was just awesome. But let's look at his exposures. And Tyler, talk to us a little while I'm pulling this up. What are you usually playing on Sundays? Are you focused on single entry? Do you play more MME? What's the tournament breakdowns or cash games? What are you usually in for contests as I pull this stuff up?
Yeah, I'm usually just in GPPs, and like this last week, I'm in Oregon, so I can't play on DraftKings right now. I'm only on FanDuel. Mm-hmm. So I played 75 into the Millie and then 75 into their one of their other bigger tournaments, and rolled with that. Yeah,
well, what's your typical setup for that when you're doing 75 lineups? Let's say. Some of the stuff we talked about earlier where, like I said, on an MME set like that, I would say like more to, how you're getting exposure versus, like I said, with the winner of this Millie. I love that they said, if I'm just playing the Millie for $20, it's almost literally the perfect scenario. Pat Mayo and myself, we mentioned our partnership with him earlier. When we do a show, we talk about like the shitter lineups where someone just says, okay, if I'm, gambling each week, I'm going to throw 3 to 5 lineups in Sunday morning, play $100 in the Millie. It's like walking into the casino with $100 in your pocket and no credit cards or wallet behind, besides your ID, maybe, if you're still getting ID'd, and you put it in your pocket and say, if I lose this money, it's whatever. If I win, I'm playing with profits and putting that 100 in the other pocket, and we roll from there. He just took a shot and played Daniel Jones in 3 of his 5. That's awesome. But when you're playing 75 lineups, how are you approaching it from a stacking perspective? In that, are you playing 10 quarterbacks and spreading it out, or are you committing to 2 or 3? What's your outlook on that?
This last weekend, I did about 7 quarterbacks and, obviously stacked with all of them. I had some run backs, not always. I don't necessarily always believe in the run back. There's only certain situations where I think you really need to have it. And so I'd try not to force it in too much.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've seen become more popular over the last year and a half, 2 years, really, where it's just you see a lot of the top players and not using it as much because you don't necessarily need it. Like you said, sometimes it just comes down. What do you need? You need fantasy points. No shit, right? You got to get the most. So the point is sometimes it's like you're forcing this run back because, if this, then that. That's likely that it happens, but not always. And then you end up with a bad run back when you could have just played another good player in that spot that's on another team that's going to get opportunities that could just pick up the target. So I actually have no problem with that. I think that's another good way to do it. So let's look at this. This is Need Lunch Money. He had 150 entries in it. This, by the way, just shows you guys it's still sorted by the winners in the tournament. I actually think it's sorted by ROI, so it's not going to be exactly by place, but typically the ROI number comes from the best prizes, so it's close enough, if not exact, here. But just look at like Redmond, for example, won, I think, more prizes in the top, so he'll show up in the ROI, even though his best finish was a 10th. So just to note that. But either way, let's look at Need Lunch Money. 150 lineups. You can sort by his exposures. Devontae Adams. Let's do it this way. Filter by this. So just so you guys see, he played 150 lineups, had a little bit of Geno, very little Josh Allen, Stroud, Daniel Jones, that. Where I kind of look is up here. Like, who was he really exposed to? And you can see Brock Purdy, Tannehill, Love, Ritter, Garoppolo. What do we have over here? Brock Purdy, Tannehill, Love. No Ritter, but Garoppolo up there too. So good to see matching up there, right, Nades? We like to see that one. So just kind of using some of the options there. Obviously, probably not using the stack rankings, but I would get him over there. If he wants a membership, he can hit me up. We'll let him check it all out and see. But I think just looking at this, it shows like committing to these spots was kind of the key. And then, like I said, Stafford comes up. You got to think that too. I often do this myself. If you're in on one side heavily, I like getting in on the other side just naturally, right? Because it's like this, you're feeling this side. If this side goes off, we know the number one correlation, and DraftKings actually rolled out the Superflex contest this year for NFL, not just the usual with college football. I don't mind getting the other side of that. So I do like that setup. You go to running back. Mixon, Kyron. So look at the field versus him on Kyron, adapting to that late news. Pollard, Jacobs, Kelly, still in on Kelly, but underweight approach on some of the other chalk, the Rashad White, the AJ Dillons of the world. So we saw already with Josh Kelly, even though still getting a good share of it. Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, Debo Samuel, Puka Nacua. Again, Debo, Puka, Ayuk are going to be a product. Even Reed with his love exposures, things like that. That's more of a product of the setup there. And then just to go back here, one more thing, tight end, Chig, Kelsey, Musgrave, Kittle, Hooper. Nades, what are you seeing here? Anything you're seeing stand out in this? I guess a lot of people asked last week about looking at some of the exposures of other top-ranked players. And then someone in our Discord mentioned, I noticed they really spread it out in these higher dollar ones. I'll talk more on that in a sec. But any thoughts on his exposures that you see? I mean, pretty capped, I think, at most positions.
Yeah, real quick, our guy Gang in the chat there, hit that like button. We know this show isn't the most viewed, but I think this is my favorite show to do. I've watched it. I mean, I've watched this show all last season with my guy Tambo here and learned a lot. I mean, this is one of the most important processes in becoming a better fantasy player. Obviously, I don't do this full time, but even if you aren't full time like myself, you do it part time as kind of a side hobby here. You always want to strive to be better. So hit that like button. Drop a comment, helps us out a ton. So we appreciate everyone in here and everyone after the fact that is tuning in here. But the thing that stood out to me is if you look at his quarterback exposures, he went with value quarterbacks. And the reason he did that is because if you look at his wide receiver and some of his other exposures on this this MME set here, he was heavily invested in Adams, who's expensive. He loved Chase for the bounce back game, right? People were on Joe Burrow. They were on that game. They said, hey, Chase, we know how explosive Chase can be. So he's already significantly over the field in those. Those are both expensive. He's not playing a lot of those cheaper guys, those cheaper game stacks that people want to go to. So he has salary to spend up for there. That was kind of his leverage piece. It allowed him to get up at Travis Kelce, right? Flip the build there. Don't get extra exposure, right? 18% to Travis Kelce in the tight end position and at the running back position, right? Joe Mixon obviously probably came with those, the Jamar Chase there, correlation, right? The running back, wide receiver, little correlation. The Tony Pollard went way overweight on Tony Pollard there, paying up there, Josh Jacobs. So that's one thing that I stood out. And the other thing too, right, is just the correlation with stack rankings, whether it's hindsight, whether it is what it is. But I'm sure he has similar stuff that he looks at in terms of projections, value rankings, things like that. It's just nice to see that Brock Purdy, Tannehill, Jordan Love, Stafford, Jared Goff, right? Those guys show up in our content over here. And that's what is so great of SHIPIT Nation, right? Is the content and the tools that we provide. We're not just spoon feeding you cores over here. So overall, obviously very good day for him. 104 players in his pool out of 150 lineups. He went a little spread out. This is typically how I MME. If I do MME, usually I'm a 3 to 5 max player. But when I do MME, I tend to cap a lot of guys because, to your point, Tambo, right? Everyone's been forcing run backs, forcing this. So if, let's say I force a run back right in that 4K range, well, why not just play the best play in that range? I already have the offense. Maybe it is like the Daniel Jones, Barkley, Waller situation, right? No Arizona piece was needed in that combination. So little things like that are, I think, why more of these players are starting to spread out more and just cap. So they're not fully invested outside of maybe 2 or 3 spots like we saw here with Chase and Adams. Yeah,
and if you guys want to get in over at ShipItNation.com, should note we didn't have this off the top, waited a little bit today to bring it in. But just to note quickly, you can get everything we offer for 5 days. So if you sign up today, you're going to get the Monday 2-game slate, the Monday Night Football. You'll get everything else with MLB, usually PGA, MMA is coming up this weekend, Thursday Night Football, everything that we've got covered for you guys over there. You get in as low as $19. Tyler, I'll go to you on this. Any other thoughts on Need Lunch Money when it comes to his pool? And then I'll give final thoughts before we look at a couple of mine and Nade's lineups and then get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one is that he just totally faded all the...
Is that me, Nades, or is that Tyler?
No, I think it's him.
So I definitely think that was interesting. And then his exposure for wide receivers is heavily correlated with the quarterbacks he chose, with the exception of Jamar Chase there. So, and then, tight end was the same thing. So you can see all the correlation just through his exposures that he had. So, he's, building his lineups right.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yes. One of the sharpest out there. And then just to note, like Nate said, you get your leverage here in these quarterbacks. But if you notice, the biggest thing I think Nade's hit on it was the flip the build overall on this slate. Just went off the main thing that everyone was looking at. He got some of White and Kelly still, but look at this. Mixon 6,500. Everyone was sort of 5,500 and below. He adapted to the one that nobody adapted to really for the most part, so that made sense. But then Pollard 75, Jacobs 71, McCaffrey 89, Henry even had almost 10% of it, 74, big time there. And then same thing over here. Adams, Chase, Keenan Allen, who was good, Diggs down here. Like he still had a lot more of the expensive guys. And then even here at tight end, it was Kelsey. And then defense obviously loved the Tampa Bay one, but then Dallas was his second highest owned. So just to note that sometimes just flipping the build completely and doing it that way and then still correlating it where you got Purdy, you got Garoppolo, these guys here, Tannehill, and then you see Adams with Garoppolo, everything to do with the Stafford and Purdy game with Samuel, Nakua, Ayuk. And then you go to tight end, Chig. So he was set up there for that as well. And then had Hopkins and Burks right here, big leverage on them. So going off the page a little bit, nothing wrong with that. Definitely think that is one of the better ways to do it. Love to see that. Shout out to Need Lunch Money. Another huge day for him. Nades, I know you wanted to talk about your lineup here quickly. It's going to correlate with a lot of what we've talked about already. So we've got about 10 minutes left on here. Get your thoughts on this one, Nades. Talk us through where you were going with this build and what you had in mind building it out.
Yeah, so the Tannehill, Burks, Chig stack, obviously took that from our stack rankings. Line Star, our ownership showed sub 15% there, and it was our number 2 ranked stack. I always use our tools. That's the thing over here. We put our money where our mouth is and where our product is, where our tools is, and we play it. And you see it right here. I had 5 lineups. I maxed this $33 5 max contest on DraftKings. It's my favorite contest by far on DraftKings that it offers. I'm a 3 to 5 max player, so I love it. So that's that stack. I ran it back with the Keenan Allen, right? Wasn't playing the Joshua Kelly chalk there. Flipped that. Went to Rachaad White, who definitely picked up ownership there, but correlated with the defense. Like you talked about, I know a lot of us over here, Hoop, you, me, Title, everyone over here was on that. The Bears looked absolutely horrendous in week 1. Justin Fields makes mistakes, things like that. Bucs defense can get there. The Devontae Adams correlation with James Cook, right? People wanted to play the Josh Allen side. People wanted to play the Stephon Diggs, the Kincaids, the Knox at tight end. So that little secondary stack there with James Cook, a little bit higher price than those 5,500 down and running backs that everyone wanted to play. I know you were big on James Cook. I definitely, after you said that, I listened to your show. When you, Hoop, and Title talked through that, took a different look at him, and he kind of just fit with the secondary stack there with Adams. And then the Tony Pollard thing. So it's interesting. I had CeeDee Lamb in this lineup. I definitely talked. It was kind of a consensus play over here between the team that, hey, Tony Pollard's probably the best play. Obviously, he was just as low owned there. Game just didn't go his way, and that just happens. Still ended up doing fine. Results oriented would say, oh, Lamb was the better play. Obviously, no crap, right? He scored more points. But in hindsight, with the game theory, Zach Wilson led offense in the Jets at Dallas here. Tony Pollard was going to get his work, just didn't run his way. So that's where that was as the last piece as my differentiator, because I know I had a little bit of chalk there with the Whites, the Devontae Adams.
Yeah, it could have, felt like he could have had an even bigger day. 20 points, nothing to frown at. I mean, it was still good. I like the setup. You talk about using the stack rankings. Literally, the main stack was Tannehill, Burks, Okonkwo, and then you ran it back with Allen, no Josh Kelly. If you're not playing Allen, which you're not in this lineup, and other people were, I like getting in on the action with a guy like James Cook, run it across with Devontae Adams, who doesn't need to have the biggest. He's a PPR guy too, right? Like he could just rack up 10 for 120 and a touchdown, and you don't need Garoppolo. In this case, he went 6 for 84 and a touchdown. So he started strong, could have been an even bigger day, but just to note from that, you can see it. And then Pollard's just where you landed. I love the White with Buccaneers set up there. So all that. So, that's one of the bigger things. This, we the people mentioned it. No, nobody, it's not nobody. I mean, some people did, we showed 5%, but it's not big because it came out so late that there wasn't a lot of time. And that's typical. You're going to see most people won't react to that news. And a lot of people get FOMO too. Like, I don't want to go change my lineup. I said it. The worst thing that could happen is I change Kelly to Kyron, and this, I have no problem with it. I posted in the Discord right away that I thought it was fine. I also wasn't as high on Kelly to start with. I liked him, but you could see by my core, which I'll show in a second. But overall, Nades, love the build. Could have went even better, but still very nice. Tyler, any thoughts on Nades' main lineup here or any questions about that one?
I loved the James Cook play. I had a ton of them yesterday. It was a bummer that, he got vultured a couple times, but he still had a pretty great day. But all in all, I mean, lineup was built right and it did pretty well. Just, wasn't quite enough.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was definitely a good lineup. It's just how the day breaks. You were, 25, 30-ish points away from winning the 555 Millie Maker, like if that was the case. So, looking at it at that perspective, it's fine. It could have been a lot better for sure. This is another lineup. This is mine. This is my core lineup on the site. It could have done a lot better, but 145, not the best, but still, just to explain it, I always like to talk through this because people have questions about what was your build, saw your core on the site, started much stronger than it finished, but Herbert still came through. Again, this was pure pivot off of Kelly, but also off of Josh Allen, who was just a little bit more money. So, and you'll see how I get there in a second when explaining it, but Herbert, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. I don't want to play Chig much on his own. I said I wanted him in a secondary stack or in the game stack. So that's what made that 11% make sense to me because you get some balance that way. I loved Rachaad White with the Tampa Bay D. I use that in a lot, but another way that you could use it, I'd said, was with a DJ Moore run back. So Rachaad White with DJ Moore, again, that really separates. It's a way like I call with your ownership where you're dividing it a little bit, right? Where you're chopping it up some. So Rachaad White, I know is going to be popular, but I know DJ Moore is not. If Rachaad White scores a couple times on the ground, maybe DJ Moore gets involved and has some action. So I definitely don't hate that. I had ones with Zach Moss and Tank Dell, who somebody, Tolga, just mentioned in the chat. You could do that. There was little ones like that you could build around. Mixon was kind of a one-off. He was the guy I was trying to go back to the well on. In week one, I loved Joe Mixon. I liked the Cincinnati-Baltimore game this week, but I didn't have room for it in this lineup beyond this situation where I could go to a guy like Mixon. The alternative, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I just didn't love leaving the money and all that. Was like I had Tampa Bay D in here with somebody else. Like I think it was a $5,400, $5,300 spot. But either way, this is where I landed. And what happened was I wanted to go, again, I like that Buffalo Vegas game, but since I didn't have it, I said, okay, I'm going to put in Jacobs. And then what's the way that makes sense? If you're already not going in on Josh Allen, 2 notes. 1, don't mind pairing it up with the defense. They were also the cheapest on the slate. So it allowed me to fit all this other stuff in there. And then lastly, I talked about this on the show yesterday, but the idea of if you use the Las Vegas, if you're not using Josh Allen, you can use Las Vegas defense, but also the note that people just said, oh, Josh Allen's going to bounce back. And he did, not being results oriented. Talking what I said before the slate started, but people weren't really factoring in that Josh Allen had a bunch of turnovers on the weeks from, leading up to the end of last season as well. So there was definitely a spot here where I thought we could have got some of that also. So I just, overall, the build was fine by my standards. I'm okay with it. Didn't turn out the way I wanted, obviously. Buffalo dropped 38 on him, and Josh Jacobs not involved at all. But Nades, I'll give you quick thoughts on this one. Go to Tyler, and then I'll get us out of here.
Yeah, overall, great build. We build very similar. Obviously, I've taken a lot of things over the years from you, things you've said, and definitely refined my process. And that's one of the best things. Obviously, you play MME, but you also have your main teams and your main core, and that's what you put on the site. So just seeing how you utilize that site, I think, is very beneficial, and how you just talk through it makes total sense. The Mixon play, right? You're not on Chase, you're not on Burrow, you're not on that game. So hey, what if Mixon, right? What if it is that 5 touchdown game that Mixon had last season? Or even 2 touchdowns, right? He's a little bit more priced than those chalk running backs. Again, you flip the build, right, with Josh Jacobs and Mixon there. So I love that. And just overall, I just didn't get the job done. And we're not results oriented. It's all about the process on how you arrive and how you put yourself in position. And when it does get there, it gets there, right? And you win all the money.
Yeah, and you got lower, like if you go back to some of those trends and stuff, we had the stacks, had the secondaries, had some, again, one thing that the site won't show when it's breaking it down is what were you doing versus the others on the slate. Not many were playing Mixon and Jacobs style lineups. We saw Need Lunch Money, who just was, where he flipped the build in some lineups like that. But that's what I'm thinking about when I'm doing this, not playing Kelly and leveraging it, only using Chig in this game stack so that it's not just Chig that's kind of popular for 3,300, almost 12%, but he's being used as a run back in this stack. So I think that's another thing just to look at. Overall, some lower owned plays like DJ Moore, just ways to break up some of that ownership. But Tyler, I'll give you final thoughts on this lineup. This is one of my main builds from yesterday.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting way to build here. You got risky in some very interesting spots. Like you said, Raiders D, nobody wanted to go to. And if they were able to shut down Allen, made a lot of sense to put Jacobs in there. And then the other thing was the DJ Moore play. Look, everybody thinks Fields is just a running quarterback, which that's obviously why, what sets him apart for fantasy football and for daily fantasy. But yesterday he barely ran. He was, a pocket passer pretty much. So DJ Moore kind of got there and he was close to having a real big day there. And then you had the correlation obviously with Rachaad White. So all in all, I think it makes a lot of sense. And you just got risky in some key spots and it didn't pay off, yesterday, but it could next week.
Yeah, and I like it too. This is in a lot of higher dollar, smaller field stuff as well. So I think that's the key too. Like I like more correlation in those, and I'll go a little bit overboard with it. Like really, it's like a parlay, right? So one piece of the parlay is the the Los Angeles Chargers and the Tennessee piece. So that counts as one with 4 guys. Moore and Rachaad White is number 2. Jacobs and the D is number 3. And then a guy like Joe Mixon, who, by the way, his workload was insane. This is just another thing where it just didn't pay off. But it's basically you just need 4 things to happen. And some of them feel a lot more likely to happen than others. Also, multiple of them really leverage the slate and what the rest of the field is doing. And that's why I always talk about it's not really who you play, it's how you play them. And that's what it came down to with this. So I think that's going to do it, guys. It was a good show. Tyler, we really appreciate having you on. Again, if you guys want to go over to LineStar and check it out, just go to shipitnation.com/LineStar app. You guys can check it out there and get in on the action. We'll be back next week, myself, Nades, to break down more of this stuff for you guys after week 3. Don't forget, later today, it'll be on the Mayo Media Network. You can go check it out on their YouTube channel. It'll be Hoop, Title, and myself breaking down New Orleans, Carolina, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, the 2-game slate, which has $1 million up top. And then we'll talk about it from a showdown perspective for the featured DraftKings slate, which is Cleveland and Pittsburgh. That's going to do it, though, for this week, guys. For Nades, for our guest Tyler, and for myself, ToeTagginTambo. Let's ship it!